Hello, loves! It is time for a Buzzwordathon reading challenge update. So I participated in Books and Lala's Buzzwordathon challenge for 2022, which is basically a challenge where she gives us a bunch of prompts that we can either do a mini buzzword challenge at the beginning of the month and we read as many books as we can with that prompt for the first 7 days of the month, or we can try and read one of the books each month and come up with 12 books for the whole year. I kind of ended up doing it that way, and I also didn't do everyone in the exact month at the beginning. I was on top of it, but I did technically switch things around for this and just picked some of the books that I really liked that fit the prompts that I read this year. I am in the spirit wearing a Books and Lala's Literally Dead Book Club sweatshirt. I absolutely love this thing. It's very comfy and cozy, and I kind of wish I ended up getting some more merch from this year, but I'll have to wait until the next round. That being said, I guess let's get into what I read for the 2022 Buzzwordathon reading challenge. For January's prompt, it was the 5 W's. Who, what, where, when, why, and even how was the prompts that she laid out for us. So I'm going with What Should Be Wild by Julia Fine. This was a story about a girl who basically could kill people with her touch, and then I think she was also able to bring them back to life. And so because of that, she was taught to not touch people. So it was a very solitary life and existence. Her father was a scientist, sort of. And so he was trying to figure out what was happening with her. Then there was another perspective that we were getting in this magical wood sort of area, and how the stories kind of converge and things happening. And although the main character kind of got on my nerves and some of the things that happened were a little bit annoying, I ended up enjoying it for the most part. This isn't a favorite though, so this is probably a high 3 stars, low 4-star book for me, but it was cool in general. So for the next prompt, we get pronouns. So me, you, she, her, he, him, their, we, us. And I ended up going with Jacqueline Woodson's If You Come Softly. And it's a short romance novel about these 2 kids back in the 80s, one black and one white, who goes to school together and end up liking each other. And if you know, mixed race relationships at that time was still pretty frowned upon. And so it's kind of them dealing with that, and things happen. I have mentioned this book several times this year because it is a book that had me ugly crying when I read it. It totally caught me off guard. I read it at the perfect time for me while doing the perfect stuff, and it hit me emotionally hard. This one is a really high 4 stars. I wouldn't necessarily say this is a favorite for me. It's not a book that I'm going to be like, oh, I want to reread, but I do recommend it, and did obviously have an emotional impact on me. So yeah, this one's a good one. Next up, we have locations. So city, state, country, attraction, etc. And I decided to go with an apothecary, trying to find something that really worked for me. So I'm doing The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. And this is a dual timeline, dual perspective story about basically a secret apothecary in the 1800s or something like that, where women would go to get poisons to basically kill off horrible men in their life. And the person who runs it has some morals behind what she's doing. It's a way to kind of save women from the horrible situations that we were in at that time, having literally no rights. And so that was the past, and then we have the present day timeline, which is a woman who is having an issue in her relationship, and she kind of goes on this trip and she learns about this apothecary, and she starts basically trying to uncover the truth about it. So it's her trying to learn about what happened there while we are experiencing some people who are experiencing stuff happening. Obviously, I don't want to give anything away. I actually really enjoyed this. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. Some people didn't like the present day perspective, or vice versa. I think most people didn't like the present day perspective, in all honesty. I enjoyed both of them. I found it to be thought-provoking in certain ways. It wasn't amazing, but I did still really like it. I liked the vibes because we definitely had a really nice somber vintage atmosphere in the past tense sections, which I absolutely adore as somebody who's all about vintagey dark themes. So that was a lot of fun. This is another book that I think is in the high 4-star realm for me. Not quite a favorite, but I still really, really enjoyed it. Then the next prompt, and I have the little Buzzwordathon list here. Kayla ends up doing these graphics each year, and I just printed it out and wrote down what I was planning on doing or what I used for that prompt. Again, things have kind of changed, but gives me an idea. So the next prompt was big and little. So big, little, small, large, anything that has to do with size. And I decided to go with What Big Teeth by Rose Zabo. And this book was an interesting one because I was not into it in the beginning. Like I was just all like, I don't know what the point is. We have our main character who has just come back home from being at some sort of boarding school. And we don't fully know why she left home, but she feels kind of like an outcast. And then I also am not sure if we know why she had to leave the boarding school or whatever, but it's pretty much about this family dynamic. And this family is mostly like werewolf type people. So like lycanthropes that, you know, shapeshift, and she's one of them, but she has some issues / additional thing. And then there's other kind of creatures in the stories and questions and weird things that we're discovering, and it's kind of this just weird, bizarre experience of you learning and uncovering and dealing with the way that this family interacts. And again, it took me a while to get into it, but like towards the end, I was really, really enjoying it, and I feel like experiencing it more for the, I almost want to say slice of life. I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to describe it, but like that kind of aspect, the way that the characters interact with each other more so than a clear plot, I think would make it way more enjoyable. And so I imagine I'm probably gonna read it again. I ended up loving it. Great vibes for sure. I am a fan of Rose Zabo and definitely want to read more stuff from them in the future. Then we have in May, the theme was directions. So north, south, east, west, up, down, etc. And I ended up going with Light It Up, which is a book I ended up getting at like a discount store, not realizing that it was the second in a duology or a series. And I kind of didn't really want to read it, but it was something that fit this, and I love this. 5 stars, 100%. So I ended up reading the first one, which was How It Went Down. And How It Went Down, also 5 stars. These are heavy hitting, by the way. So How It Went Down is about a black boy shot by a white man and everybody's perspective around the event. So it was fascinating seeing how people's personal experience vastly affected the way that they recalled the same event. No matter what the actual thing is that happened, just seeing so many different perspectives behind it, I think was beautifully done. It was heartbreaking, it was thought-provoking, it was emotional, it was hard. And then Light It Up is a lot of the same characters sometime in the future with some other event happening and how they are reacting to that scenario. And again, there are some really tough topics and like heavy hitting conversations that we get in here that were just beautifully done. I love them. And I really want to get the first book in this series because I don't have it. I got the audio from my library. I love the cover of the paperback. I really want it to be in hardcover. I do not like the original hardcover design because it doesn't match this at all, but I feel like the paperback one does. So I'm debating whether or not I'm gonna get the first one in paperback and see if maybe they have the second one with this cover in paperback as well so that I can get a matching set. I know, I'm a book collector, don't hate, you know, but yeah, I really recommend these. Hard, but worth it. Okay, so then for June, the theme was a book with all, the word all in the title. And so I decided to go with another Rose Zabo book, and this is We All Fall Down. This is a queer fantasy novel, basically about a hidden city within our world that is magical, pretty much, and kind of like misfits go to almost to try and become normal. So you get a lot of people who don't fit in, and there's a lot of discussion discussion about the negative perceptions that we have on ourselves in general, and then also that is exacerbated in the Black and or LGBTQIA plus communities. And so that was an interesting topic, fairly subtle. Actually, I don't know if it's super subtle, but like that wasn't the point of the story. The fantasy aspect of the story is really that you have this world that is magically based, that's king and queen were like overthrown and they lost the magic when that happened. And so there are some people that are working to try and bring the magic back by finding the heirs of the king and queen and reinstating them and hoping that them and some other people can kind of unite and bring magic together or something like that. I will say it's really hard to describe this because there's a lot going on. We have 4 main characters in here and we get their different perspectives. And in this book, because it's supposed to be a series or a duology or something like that, I cannot wait until the next one comes out. But in this book, it's obviously a setup. I really enjoyed it. I love this. This is at this point a 5 stars for me. I will say I was really apprehensive about this because a lot of people were afraid that it was racist, and there is racism in here. One of the characters experiences racism and there is some like ignorance and, you know, issues that are expressed in here, but I feel like the author did a really good job of showcasing that that was like not okay. And so I feel like it handled the situation really well. Like a book that has racism in it isn't racist. It's just talking about things that actually happen. And even though the author is white, which is what a lot of people thought was an issue, I don't, because 1, it wasn't entirely about that, and 2, it would also be a little bit annoying to completely ignore that part of Black people's reality. And I really respect that the author took the time to try and make that commentary and still be respectful. So I love it. Like, I can't wait to continue the series. Next up, we have book related words. So book, paper, library, pages. And I ended up going with the Book of Two Ways. I ended up getting this in a subscription box, the Once Upon a Book Club book box years ago. And I don't see this book and go like, oh, I really want to read this. And unfortunately, I'm not going to say that this is a book that I absolutely love. I didn't. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought considering what it's about, and I think it actually handled the topic fairly well. So this is about a woman who has a near-death experience. Basically, she's on a plane and it's possibly about to crash. They're going down, and instead of thinking about her husband and her daughter and her life and all of the people that is currently there, she thinks about somebody from a past life, and she makes the decision to go and search for that person. And she used to be an archaeologist or a student for archaeology, and so they were doing digs and stuff. And so she goes and does that for this person to talk to them and figure out why that was who she thought about all of these years later. And it was interesting. I think it did a pretty good job. I liked it, but I didn't love it. It's not my type of thing. I liked the academic aspect of the book quite a bit, but yeah, there are some things that I just didn't love. So this was a 3 stars, low 3 stars. It was good. There are things that I liked about it. I'm not gonna keep this book at the end of the year. That's where we're at. But I do think people will enjoy this. This is not a bad book. It's just not my thing. Next up, we have items: crown, house, key, blanket, etc. Basically, Kayla did a video where she like gave us examples of all of the things, and so I wrote them down on the back of the paper so that I knew exactly what kind of constitutes for those. So for items, I actually decided to go with house. So we have House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, and this is about basically like a maid, not very well off, living with her abusive, ill brother, and who wants to get out of poverty. And so one day, while looking for like job recs in the newspaper, she sees an opening for a blood maid for one of the 4 remaining big houses up north, specifically the House of Hunger, and she goes to apply for the job. In doing this, she ends up experiencing some very interesting things, learning some very interesting things, uncovering some very interesting things, and it was a wild ride. I really enjoyed it. This was a 5-star for me. It was a good time. It was crazy. It was all over the place. It was fun. I don't think it's like perfect. It's not a favorite, but I did love it. Okay, Then for September, it was light and dark. So I decided to go with a Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. And this is a book that I ended up reading a long time ago. But basically, there's this woman who, when she was a kid, a bunch of people ended up going missing and dying or something like that. And the person kind of got locked up, and many years later, something similar is happening again. And she's trying to figure out what's going on and what happened and whether or not the original person is innocent or not, and trying to figure out how this is happening considering what had happened in the past or whatever. I don't know. This is one of those books that it's good to go in knowing as little as possible. It was a thriller. It was enjoyable. 3 stars, maybe on the high end. I liked it. Next up, we had Creatures and Animals. So I ended up going with Bunny. This was actually really fun because I ended up reading this for a reading books like Books and Lala video that I did, where I read some of her favorite books, and that was an experience. I will have that linked above. Definitely got some good recs out of that challenge, this being one of them. This is about a girl that's basically going to this school that has this group of girls that call themselves Bunny. So it's the bunnies, and she's kind of jealous of them and sort of wants to be part of the group. And at some point she kind of gets in, but things are weird and questionable, and like things are happening, and it just does all this kind of stuff, and you've got this kind of like weird magical-ish aspects and just a lot of stuff. It was like a fever dream. This was a fever dream of a book. If you're into that, it's a great time. I really enjoyed it. Another high 4 stars for me. The more I think about stuff that happened, especially towards the end, the more I'm like, I love this book. But I will say there were some parts where I'm like, I don't know, it's, you know, getting a little boring here, but like, it was good. Next up, we have in November, ing, so words that end with ing, and I decided to go with Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. And this is a story about a curmudgeon jerk of a dude who ends up kicking the bucket and attends his own funeral to find out that no one really liked him because he was kind of a jerk. And so in the process of trying to move on to the next step, he ends up having some experiences, learning some things, and it was really, really enjoyable. I loved it. This is a 5-star read for me, and I wasn't expecting that because a lot of people who read this, who read TJ Klune's other book, The House on the Cerulean Sea, felt disappointed by this. I have not read The House on the Cerulean Sea yet, and so no expectations for me, really. Like, there was nothing for me to compare this to, and I just loved it. So now I'm even more excited about reading The House on the Cerulean Sea, because like, this was great. This was cute. It was cheesy, it was thought-provoking, it talked about some tough stuff, and I really loved that the author's note, the first thing that it starts off with is just a like, hey, by the way, here are some of the tough topics we're gonna cover in this book, that I don't actually think was a spoiler, you know, but it was just, it felt good knowing that the author was all like, you should know this. And I was like, thank you. Good on you. So yeah, I love this, 5-star. I recommend. It was good. And then the last book for the Buzzwordathon, December's prompt was Numbers. And I'm going with Party of Two by Jasmine Guillory. This one is interesting because I ended up reading this for a romance reading vlog that I did. And I read this first thinking that I wasn't going to really enjoy it because I feel like I've read several books from her specifically that were kind of misses, right? Like, they just didn't really get there. I didn't hate them, didn't love them, was a little bit disappointed. And this is pretty much about a lawyer and a senator that ends up in a kind of hush-hush relationship, and it's them kind of dealing with that. And I hated the idea of that. Like, I didn't realize that that's what this was about when I picked it up, and then I read the back of it and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna hate this even more. And I haven't liked other stuff that I read from them. So I was just like not feeling it. And then I ended up loving it. It was done so well. It was so enjoyable. It was so cute. Like, it's not amazing, but it was definitely a good time. So this ended up being a good high 4-star for me. And I would probably read it again in the future. Like, it was that cute. I liked the dynamic. I liked the characters. I liked how things were handled. I enjoyed it. All right, and that is everything for the 2022 Buzzwordathon reading challenge. I had a lot of fun. I look forward to doing this again in 2023. If you ended up participating, let me know what you ended up reading, or at least your favorite read from the picks that you did for Buzzwordathon and what prompt it correlated to, because I think that would be really fun. My favorite, oh, that's hard. My favorites is between these four: Light It Up, We All Fall Down, House of Hunger, and Under the Whispering Door. Because I just read Under the Whispering Door and it's kind of wholesome feeling, I think I'm gonna go with this for now, but like, these are all fire. So that is not an easy call for sure. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section below. Include fang emoji? Is there a fang emoji? Is there a werewolf? Vampire? Include one of those emojis down below if you made it this far, and I will catch you in the next video. Until next time, bye!